of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube. And this special SST is not here alone. It's a crossover episode again. If you heard the last one, you know what to expect, which is some great podcasting, if I must say so myself. The Across the Cavs host, Zach Weiss, is here in the building after Game 4. The Subway Sports Talk Across the Cavs crossover is happening again. This time, after we did our pre-series predictions, we now have a look at what took place within these 4 games so far, and perhaps a shocking result to this point where the Knicks lead 3-1. So everything about Game 4, Game 5, and beyond is on the table, and Zach is here. Zach Weiss, what's up, brother?
Hey, Pete, I feel better now that we've had a couple hours since this game ended. This was the highlight of my weekend was going to be, Friday night, Sunday game. We get a couple quick wins and we get in, we get out. But obviously the joy I was expecting to experience is being taken by the Knicks and their crazy streak team and their fans. And we haven't gotten any new bing bong-esque lines, at least. So there's no line I can always think of that makes me feel sad. But I will say, as we get into talk about this series, I don't think I've given the Knicks any credit properly before. I've had a couple other appearances with Sports Grid. We talked about that last week. I was on twice last week to talk before Game 2 and Game 3. Game 2 nailed it. Game 3, not so much. And coming into Game 3, I kind of underplayed Mitchell Robinson and RJ Barrett. So I want to apologize for that. We're going to get into it, but shout out to both of them. They proved me wrong. They proved everybody wrong. And I'm very impressed by the core players of the Knicks and by their coach, who I think has done the best job of his entire career over the last couple of games.
And you brought up some things that are top of mind for me, and we're going to dive deep into all of them. The Tibbs factor, the depth here, and just to reiterate kind of what we were talking about pre-series, my whole thing was that it's obvious the Cavs have a better top end roster. That's like not even really a debate, even to this point where the starters were outplayed today, because the starters for the Cavs are basically the whole team because they play like the entire game. The Knicks have this strength and numbers thing going where their depth is real. And you can make an argument they have one of the best benches in the NBA. Now, does the best bench in the NBA usually lead you to being a final contender? No. And we're saying the Knicks are final contender? No, obviously not. But in these 3 wins for the Knicks, there has been that like attacking from all angles perspective that I kind of expected. And it was Hart in Game 1 and Game 4. It was RJ Barrett in Game 3. I mean, Game 2 is one of those games where like you guys were such a whirlwind and Garland was so hot and Mitchell was solid that who knows what happened, and boom, it was over. Right. So in these other games where the Knicks have won, Brunson got his tonight. Randle got his earlier in Game 1. But when it came down to it, it's the Barretts, it's the Harts, it's the Hartensteins, it's the Mitchell Robinsons who are making their fingerprints really noticeable on these games and these outcomes. And Zach, we didn't mention this yet. Randle did not play in the 4th quarter, which is wild. And out of the Tibbsiest of Tibbs things you can do, it is never to sit your stud who played all year long, who averaged probably as many minutes as top 10 guys in the league. Like, it was unheard of. So the Tibbs renaissance that might be taking place in front of our eyes is shocking for many, but super shocking for anybody who watched him coach in Chicago and Minnesota and even in New York the past couple of years.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my main keys that I have as to why this game went how it did. It's the fact that he allowed, unfortunately for us, he allowed Obi Toppin to play the entire 4th quarter. Why did that matter? Obi only made 2 baskets. He only totaled 19 minutes. He did what Willie Green did in the first round last year with Jose Alvarado. He played him a criminally low number of minutes over the first 3 quarters and would just stick him out there for the entire 4th. Didn't expect to see this. Because if you think back on the Knicks, and obviously I'm here for the Cavs, but you think back on the Knicks, Pete, and it's always been when the Knicks get into trouble, all right, it's Julius time. Sorry, Obi, you might be doing nothing wrong, but it's Julius time. And then the last time they struggled in the playoffs, they tried Obi and Julius, but it was too late in the series to salvage anything for that to even matter. I'm very impressed with how the Knicks did at the end of the game, unfortunately. And we're going to talk about keys, and I'm going to give both perspectives, but there's 4 players that led the Knicks to this win. You're going to be shocked at 2 of them. The first is Obi Toppin getting the 4th quarter minutes. The second is Cam Reddish The third is Kevin Knox. Why do I bring that up? Why do we bring that up? Because the Knicks traded Kevin Knox to Atlanta for their Cam Reddish package last year. And while he barely saw the court because of injuries and benchings and yada, yada, Cam Reddish was the trade piece that got them Josh Hart, who was undervalued in New Orleans and undervalued in Portland after leaving the Lakers. And he's unfortunately the reason we lost. The offensive rebounds, the clutch shooting, and combine that with a power forward that didn't need touches, just rebounds, and fortunately they found the recipe to beat us.
That was an incredible little now you see me, now you don't moment right there, Zach. That was so funny. The Cam Reddish crowd is like, I always knew he had worth. I always knew. It just wasn't in himself. It was elsewhere. Yeah, the Josh Hart thing is crazy. I was watching the game with my buddy, and at one point in the fourth quarter, he just turned to me and said, "Can you imagine this team without Josh Hart?" And I go, "No," because they may be technically the 5 seed still if they never made the Josh Hart move. You know, they probably could have still beat the Nets and beat the Heat and et cetera. But what he brought to this team was that missing link of just tenacity, dirty work, rebounding. It wasn't just Mitch out there on an island trying to grab rebounds, because this guard or forward, whatever you want to call him, is grinding on the glass. It's actually insane how many boards he comes up with. And Mitch deserves his credit for putting in work on the offensive glass. That was a point you and I spoke about last time as well. But just to get more organized here for a second, Zach and I are going to go through this game. Zach has some key points he wants to go through. And I think a great way for us to kind of work through this game in this series is for you to bring those points to the table, and we'll discuss them as we go. So you have some points on the Knicks win, you have some points on what the Cavs need to do, and you have one other list that is slipping.
Right, the game 5 musts.
The game 5 musts. So those things that's exactly what we need to do to walk through this episode. So we'll get into that as well. But last thing I want to say real quick about the depth. We were joking. This is more for our Knicks fans listening to this right now, and sorry to the Across the Cavs listeners who have to now listen to this. But we had this Knicks team like 4 or 5 years ago where we were like having conversations that like Alonzo Trier needed to be inserted into the starting lineup, right? Like that's where the Knicks were at. They had a guy named Mindaugas Kuzminskas, whose Knicks fans were like obsessed with, even though we knew he wasn't good, right? That's where the Knicks were at a few years ago. And for them to come now with a team where they're 9th and 10th players, even some of their guys who get DNP'd on a regular basis are actually useful NBA players. It's a foreign world to us Knicks fans. Like Miles McBride comes in, plays 2 short stretches and plays rock solid defense, hits a 3. Like what more can you ask for from a deep bench guy than that? So it's just flabbergasting, and that's going to be wrinkled in throughout our conversations here. So Zach, why don't you kick us off? You're going to do the Knicks list first. The keys.
I'll do the Knicks list, and I'll make it really short so then I can finally get to the Cavs. But yeah, so here's what I got. I got 5 reasons the Knicks won. I've already given you one of them. The first, 17 offensive rebounds. We talked about that number after game 1 as well. You know, it was Hartenstein late in the game with the little push out after. They had Josh Hart 3 with 5 seconds on the shot clock. They dominated on the glass again today. Hart had 5. Mitch had 7. You're getting them from Obi as well. That's not good. The second key is Tom Thibodeau. Again, it's just the top in minutes. He didn't get many touches, and he only had that 1 layup. But guess what? It came off an offensive rebound. Every time the Cavs would get close, and I could finally be excited to give up an offensive rebound, it would happen. Number 3 is Jalen Brunson. He's not that tall, but he's damn good, and it's unfortunate for us. One-on-one, doesn't matter who's guarding him. I think Okoro is the only one that could clamp him, but Okoro's outside shot is too limited for him to get the crunch time minutes in this game, or so the coaching staff thinks. I got some bones to pick about rotations, but no one else could stop Brunson. And besides that stretch in the middle of the third quarter when the Cavs made their run, he was unstoppable. Number 4, the guy that Stephen A. Smith said shouldn't be on the floor, RJ Barrett. Stepping up. We don't have Basketball References lines available yet for this game, so we don't have all the advanced stats to pull from just yet. That should be out tomorrow. But RJ went 9 for 18. Which meant he was 9 for 12 inside the arc. He missed 6 threes and 5 free throws, but he scored 26. He got to the basket, and unfortunately, early in the fourth quarter, on a call that I really thought should have been challenged, was not. RJ Barrett will drive and scoop, leans into Mobley. They weren't calling fouls like this. They say that's a foul. Mobley's defensive ability kept the Cavs in the game for that early part of the fourth after he came out late in the third with 4. They didn't challenge. He has to come out, and that's where the offensive rebounding became an issue again. So it was that moment plus RJ. And the fifth and final one, obviously, was Kevin Knox to Cam Reddish to Josh Hart. And unfortunately, and Josh Hart was a guy I was kind of hoping we might go after. The difference in this game was that the Cavs decided to stand pat at the deadline, and the Knicks went after and got Josh Hart. That's really the difference in the series.
It actually probably stings for you to think about how much you need a Josh Hart in that rotation. It is actually can very much so be argued that he would be the missing piece to your guys' success. Not saying he'd make you a finals contender right away. Same for the Knicks. But like those LeVert minutes that are so up and down, the Okoro minutes where he makes a great play but then misses 3 shots, the Cedi Osman minutes where, he makes some good plays. The Cedi Osman thing we're going to have to talk about because I have some thoughts about Cedi Osman and maybe what I want more from him, but I expect more. I don't know. We'll get there in a second.
Jetty, it's pronounced with a J, by the way, like Jedi, Jetty. But besides that, yes.
That's on me. Cedi Osman, we'll get to him in a minute. Josh Hart is kind of a combination of those players. He's got a little bit of LeVert in him when he could kind of create by himself. He can get to the rack a little bit. He can't shoot like LeVert, but he can make some plays. He's got the Jetty in him where he can kind of cause some havoc on defense, get out in fast breaks, and he can defend like Isaac Okoro. He might not be as high-end defensively as Isaac Okoro, but he can take on the challenge of a Donovan Mitchell. He could take on a challenge if he wasn't on the same team of a Jalen Brunson. Like he can do those things, and that is a missing link that every team, not every team, a lot of teams have in the league. The Cavs have, the Knicks had, and he really plugs in those holes. One more thing I do want to get to on your Knicks point before we jump over to the Cavs. The offensive rebounding stuff was incredible. I tweeted this out. I think it might have been the second quarter. I was obsessed, and I've been obsessed all year with Mitchell Robinson. There's been this stuff that's coming out where he kind of got a little frustrated throughout the season where, whether it was his saying he wanted to get a little more involved in the offense, that he's just doing cardio out there, but that's never deterred him from just being a menacing rebounding force and a guy who gets tip-ins and alley-oops and just great positioning down low. He's giving 2 of the better big men in the NBA fits by himself in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley on the glass. Like that shouldn't happen in theory. And because of his effort and his energy on the glass and running the floor, he completely flips the script. And Hartenstein did a great job filling that same role when he got in there with a little bit more offensive flair, being able to pass and dribble a little bit. But man, I can't give Mitchell Robinson enough credit. We always talk about how RJ can be the punching bag or the unsung hero on any given night. But we very seldom give Mitchell Robinson respect like some, top level or tier 2 level center. Obviously, he's not a tier 1 guy because the offense isn't there. But what he provides at that position with the scorers around him is so invaluable to me. And I thought he can give them fits based off the regular season performance where he had 9 offensive rebounds, and it's been more of the same. I don't know how long he can keep that up, but Zach, that's got to give you a little bit of nightmares over there when you see a ball go up in the air and Mitch has gotten good position.
Yeah, and I haven't really talked about this much yet, and this thought just crossed my mind, but I'm looking at Jarrett Allen's numbers and his minutes, and he's pretty much Andrea Bargnani without the jump shot. Now, Bargnani was a number 1 pick. He averaged 20 a game. I'm not dissing his game and he was a Knick. He actually wasn't even that bad because of his ability to score, but he wasn't a winning player. But I will say, and it sucks. It sucks. I wouldn't even use that word often, a little extreme for me. I keep all my expletives off the air, but I'm mad. He's been bad. He's been really bad. He was starting to make shots late in the game, but he's been soft on the glass. He's not dunking on people. He's not blocking anything. Josh Hart's cooking him. This is that kind of 2K thing, Pete, where you have your guys who can slash. They put a defender on their back and they score every time unless you have a 99 shot blocker playing defense. That's what it feels like every time Josh Hart and RJ Barrett go to the basket. He gets Mobley in position, gets the foul on him. Allen can't defend the rim. They played, by the way, I think this is the first time this season, at least when I've been watching, Mobley and Allen played the first 11:30 of the opening quarter, and I don't remember a time where neither one subbed out to that point. Allen just was not good today. Mobley had his moments. I think he started to come on, but the foul trouble killed his rhythm going into the fourth. And Mitch is a problem. I know it's not only the Cavs that he does this to, but when you're hyper focused on a series, you're like, oh, it's only happening to us. And we have these thoughts on these players coming in that, oh, they're not all that. We knew it on the Cavs side. We knew what to expect from Brunson, and we knew what to expect from Randle. But I didn't expect Mitch to do this based on where he was at coming into the series. I didn't expect RJ Barrett to bounce back like this, because he hasn't been this really since
ever,
right? He's not consistent with it at all. I had him in fantasy 2 years ago. So every time I check a Knicks score, I'd be like, oh, what did RJ do? And he was actually a good player for me. But in real life, I didn't expect Josh Hart to do this. I expected he's like a 10-5-5 guy. He's not this energy difference maker. I don't think he'd even been to the playoffs before this season. So look, I give them credit. They're hungry, and I underestimated the impact of the MSG crowd based on how Trae Young silenced it 2 years ago. And I think personally, I put too much stock in Trae Young's ability to silence a loud crowd on what the Cavs might do this weekend. And it obviously didn't go that way.
Yeah, and you know what? It's also obvious at this point that Knicks team was not the same. That Knicks team was there on just great luck and good energy all year. They were not there on merit of this is a really good team that even if they're not better than their opponent, they can play as good or better any given night. That's just the fact of the matter. We all wanted to love, all of us Knicks fans wanted to love the hell out of that team, and we had a great time with that team. But when it came down to it, they were just not even good enough. They couldn't hang with the Hawks. They wouldn't have been able to hang with this version of the Cavs team either. So you have that thing. And with RJ Barrett, man, I did a TikTok about him the other day after game 3, and I was like, it's been easy to call him the punching bag. He's inconsistent, and sometimes it's not his fault, but a lot of times it is his fault. He gets blinders. We talked about this with LeVert in our pre-series podcast. Those are the similar type of players where they get blinders on, and they're like, we need to score. I'm going to score. I'm going to score. I'm going to score. When RJ Barrett doesn't necessarily have that mindset and says instead, I'm going to take my offensive chances when they come to me and still be aggressive, he's so much better. And he made a couple passes tonight too that let me know that he's in a rhythm, that he's playing within the offense. Makes the world of difference. And on the Jarrett Allen front, there were a few points where he had some nice buckets. I think he backed down like, I don't know. I don't remember who it was, Quickley or Hart or something down low and got a bucket. He scored 2 or 3 buckets in a few minutes there. And as a Knicks fan, I was saying, you know what? I'll live with that. If Garland's not shooting threes and Mitchell's not shooting threes, let Jarrett Allen dribble and take a hook shot. And if he makes it, he makes it. We have an 8-point lead right now. His 2-pointer is not killing us. So that's another weird thing with a center like that, where yes, you want him to do more offensively, but you almost don't, because you need Garland and Mitchell and LeVert and Mobley to be more explosive offensively, to get momentum shifters. And unless Allen's dunking on somebody, his little floater over Quickley in the paint, it's not getting the Cavs going. It's not their momentum boost. I was fine with Allen scoring those points, which kind of sucks for him because they were nice plays, but it just wasn't an impactful bucket by him at any point.
And here's what I want to say before we switch kind of to the Cavs side of things. And it's the sense of urgency for me that really changes things. Every time the Knicks come down with Brunson, and whether it was Garland starting on him or Mitchell or Okoro, a few seconds into the clock, they start screening, whether it's a big man, whether it's Quickley, who I don't know how legal either team's screens have been, because there's been a lot of, I will say some of these Knicks look like they're holding the Cavs. Maybe they're not, and the Cavs are probably doing the same, but we don't match your physicality. Bless you. I see your mic is muted as you sneeze, so bless you. Pete dropping a couple of silent bombs in there. And a third one, bless you. Never go unblessed. But
3-point ball.
Yeah, unfortunately, 3 more points for the Knicks. But, looking at it, and I was talking about this tweeting through the game, first 5 minutes, it was a 5-point game, but the Knicks had drawn a few fouls. They were aggressive. They were going into contact. Cavs were sidestepping it, okay? And Quickley comes in, sets these quick screens. Hart sets these quick screens. Grimes being out, blessing in disguise. I think if he comes back, he should be coming off the Knicks bench for that matter. But that's for later. No Quentin Grimes talk just yet. Josh Hart is that guy, and him starting certainly changed the way this game went. They set quick screens. They run plays. They have motion. Unfortunately for the Cavs, I felt like they maybe had 5 or 6 possessions total today where they ran something and didn't just say, Don or Darius, do it or lob it, because there was that third quarter stretch where the bigs were playing Lob City and we felt like the Clippers, which has been the case at times this year. But that was the only stretch of the game where we're running set plays And you saw it too. It's just ISO and movement. If we score, yay, all right, I'm pumped. We got a bucket. But also, you're going to do anything to confuse the Knicks, to get them in trouble, confused, get Tibbs angry, losing his voice so he can't talk in the huddles? No, on all counts. So.
Yeah, and Garland really was cooking in that third quarter. Holy hell. The passes were incredible. The shot making was incredible. That's when we got super nervous as Knicks fans. And you're right. Those were moments where there was a pick and roll with action on the bottom where he was getting to that elbow area and then either getting a great look at a jumper or just dumping off to Allen and Mobley. And boy, like that was scary. Like if that stood up, the fourth quarter might have looked a little bit different, but the pressure was just too strong on Garland and Mitchell. They never got comfortable. So Zach, let's go over to your Cavs points here, your Cavs list. And I'm sure Donovan Mitchell will be brought up on that front because we've been talking for 20 minutes or so now, and we haven't even mentioned the 11-point outing from Donovan, which was crazy small. We knew there was a chance he could have one game where he was out, but you don't expect this. You don't expect 2 points in the second half from Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, this is something else. Yeah, this is definitely something else. So he's third on my list. This isn't in order of what's most important. It's just as I was going through what mattered. The first is the lack of threes. Now, the thing is, Peter, the Knicks only made 6. Oh, the Knicks only made 8. It's not like 3-point ball was crushing us. They made 8 out of 29, almost worse than our 6 of 23. Jetty had one early. Okoro had one in the third. LeVert hit a few open ones, and Garland had those 2. I think then they might have honestly both been in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of reach. I think they were. I don't think we had any in the third when we actually made our run. So we didn't lose directly because of the 3, but it certainly had an impact. The Cavs made 14 in their game 2 win. Defensive rebounding, we grabbed 26 defensive rebounds, and Knicks had 17 offensive rebounds. That's 17 out of 43 times. Going to do a quick math check here. The Knicks grabbed 39.5% of available offensive rebounds. That's really embarrassing for us, given that we're one of the only teams to employ 2 7-footers. So I'll say a capital yikes, unfortunately, on that front. Number 3 on the list is Donovan Mitchell. Peter, 5 for 17, 2 points in the fourth quarter, late. And there were honestly times, this hasn't happened before, where I wanted him to pass instead of shoot. Normally he makes the right play. He had 13 assists in the game 2 win, right? But this is now 3 straight games where his scoring has been at the back after he dropped 38 in game 1. He was not ready for MSG, which is kind of crazy because 5 straight playoff appearances in Utah, 4 of them with fans, 1 of them was the bubble. He's used to it. And he's had some insane moments. So it's certainly different. It is a new system. He had been established with Quinn Snyder. And when you're a star with the same coach for a while, you get better. Kind of like Jamal Murray with Mike Malone. They've been in the system. This is his first year. They've dealt with some injuries. That's another one. And this wasn't listed on my original list, but I will say the starting lineup. Karras wasn't terrible, 14-9, 4 out of 10. He's better off the bench. You should have started Okoro to get your intensity. If not Okoro, then Lamar Stevens. Those are your defensive dogs. They're the ones getting the DPOG chains after games when the Cavs win. They have 52 wins regular season and playoffs. They get them a lot. That you don't start either one certainly hurts. There was a Jetty Osman missed 3. We'll talk about him from your perspective at the end of this list. Jetty had an open 3 after we got a stop with about 3:20 to go. He missed. Ball ended up, I think, out of bounds on the sequence. Knicks then used their last timeout before they lost it. That miss was very tough. He hit the one when he first came in. He's had some great moments. That hurt. Jared Allen mentioned it was a turnstile. Didn't do much. Josh Hart was taking him to the basket over and over. And that 5th foul on Mobley was the nail in the coffin with 10 minutes left. I didn't want it to be. I still believed until the last minute. I even thought I'm not turning this off because maybe, just maybe, these 3s go in. They force a turnover, yada, yada. So I'll say that with Mobley, with the foul. And there's 2 other plays that stand out to me. There was Obi Toppin going top of the key to the basket for the layup. It's the only time he really shot in the paint. And because that was off a near turnover at half court, halfway through the fourth with Brunson. If LeVert gets that steal, we're off in transition. That's 2 points. Actually, 2 other plays. That's 1. 2 is the steal that they had at half court. And Randle, whether it was a foul or not, we're not arguing that. They got the stop. Mitchell couldn't score on him. in the ISO, and I'm trying to remember what the last play I wanted to focus on here was. I don't know if I have that one queued up in my mind. This is all just trying to remember the box score for a lot of moments, but Knicks did it. We didn't do it, and there's a lot other than Darius Garland, 23-10 with no turnovers, 21-8 after halftime without a turnover. There's not many guys I can smile at right now.
Yeah, the Garland factor was the main factor. It was the only real nerve-inducing player for the Knicks right there, because Mitchell, every time he shoots, you get a little nervous because all it takes is one for him at some point, right? He hits one of those step-back threes, and you go, uh-oh, he might get hot and score 10 in 4 minutes, right? Like that can happen for Donovan Mitchell. It never did, but Garland was so scary, man. He was so scary. And that's why, I'm not going to sit here and say that this series is over, because Mitchell, yeah, he didn't show up in game 4. He can go back to Cleveland and dominate in game 5, 100%. And if Garland is now getting into this better rhythm in the playoffs here, where he's had a couple good games in a row, more or less, when those two guys are cooking, this team's really hard to beat. And the thing that you brought up about the starting lineup, I want to touch on real quickly, because bringing LeVert into the starting lineup obviously makes it a more dynamic offensive unit. But that's not really what your team needs. Your team doesn't need to be more dynamic offensively, because with LeVert out there, that's touches away from Garland, touches away from Mitchell, touches away from Mobley. Those three guys are all you need to run a good offense. That's it. You need that other piece, which is why I look at Cedi Osman as a guy who should be in there. He plays defense, and he's at least useful enough on offense if you let him get in there and get some rhythm. The LeVert factor, he is built to come off the bench and give you a spark on offense. And we talked about him at length on the series preview, where you don't want him to think that he needs to be needed.
Yeah, he's not Nathan Scott.
As soon as he thinks he needs to be the man, it gets weird, and he takes too many shots. It's very reminiscent of what we were talking about with RJ Barrett. And it doesn't make sense to me to have him in there, because your defense has been a top tier defense in the NBA the entire season, if not the best defense. The Cavs have been number 1 for a lot of the season. That is not based off of Garland and Mitchell. It's based off of Mobley, Allen, and Okoro. That's the big 3 defensive unit that you guys are employing and wreaking havoc on offenses across the league. If you make that Karis LeVert, he is mediocre at best defensively. Donovan Mitchell can be very good at defense. He's okay. He's decent. He has moments. He's not always giving the max effort because of the offensive burden. Darius Garland is okay at best on defense.
Correct. He was decent today, I will say.
He actually was decent today. He's moving his feet very well. That's why I'm saying he's decent at best. He's not going to change the game defensively. So now your top tier defense is being hindered by 3 mediocre defensive guards or wings, and your 2 guys are left on an island. There were points on the flip side where when Garland was cooking in the third quarter, Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, and Hartenstein were like on an island where they were like, oh my God, do I guard Garland at the elbow and allow an easy dump off to one of the bigs? Or do I sit back and let him take a wide open elbow jump shot? Like, they were in no man's land. And that was because Brunson was letting Garland go right by him. That was because RJ Barrett couldn't stay in front of him. But that's why your defense was so good, because the Okoro factor of being able to take the best player on the other team. When you have LeVert, Mitchell, and Garland, who do you want to guard Jalen Brunson? Who do you want to guard RJ Barrett? Those are now mismatches when they don't need to be, or at least one of them don't need to be. And that funneling mentality that you have with Mobley and Allen cleaning things up, it doesn't become as big of a factor because those guys like Brunson and Barrett are getting to easy spots on the floor.
Yeah, no, exactly. And on your Cedi Osman comments, it's kind of funny because I always feel like he's a better defender than he is. And he was the first starting small forward after LeBron James left. Now, he's the guy they stuck there. And I remember the very first Cavs game post LeBron, second time, and they're playing against the Raptors. And this is before I was a League Pass guy. And obviously, I watch games in a way you're not supposed to say you watch games, because then they watch you. So I pay for basketball. I do now. Can't change the past. But I was watching on the League Pass trial, and it was Kawhi's Raptor debut. Everyone had eyes on that game, and Cedi was actually solid, I thought. Yeah, I think he had a 20-point game. He had some good moments. He's had those good games over the course of his career, and as the last 2 seasons, as they've become competitive for the first time since then, he's for some reason been, whether a fall guy to JB Bickerstaff or whatever, he'll take a DNP CD, then he'll play 30 minutes. That happened in the regular season. And there's been games in this series, I want to say, I don't know for sure off the top of my head, where he probably has played only a few minutes. and I was very happy, I'll say, when they decided to put Danny Green in. I think it was starting game 2. We've been waiting for that for a while, and it hasn't been as good as we thought. And he hasn't gotten as many opportunities these last 2 games, because the thing is, if the Cavs struggle, JV is pretty quick. And look, it's hard to coach. It's hard to make a rotation, but he is bad at it. I will say he's bad at it. He hasn't gotten better, and I don't think anyone's helping him with that. And
Can I
yes,
ask
go
you a quick
ahead.
question
Interject for a moment.
before you go off of Bickerstaff? How much do you miss Ty Lue?
Because I miss him a lot. With this
like
team, he'd be nice because he'd find ways to be creative. I think it would certainly be interesting. I think with Ty Lue, maybe they probably would have wanted to pull the trigger to give him another piece because he's creative with rotations. Because the Clippers are probably getting knocked out, and it sucks in the next 2 days.
It's no fault to Ty Lue.
No, he's trying everything. Yeah. I respect the hell out of the way that they're able to run an offense through Russ, who's only been there for 3 months when his top 2 guys are out. All the respect in the world. I never lost faith in Russell Westbrook, and you can check anything I've ever said anywhere for that.
I definitely have.
Understandably, people like yourself have. But anyway, it would be nice to have Ty Lue, but at the same time, I don't think he would have coached through the rebuild. We had too many years in between. You had to change. Unfortunately, they didn't have great candidates before. Actually, it went, Larry Drew was a mess because he didn't want to be there. And then you brought in John Beeline, who also didn't have much of a chance. No, he wasn't good. Okay. He was 14-40, and he had the slugs versus thugs. And in a league that's predominantly not white, you can't say that. You can't say it anyway, but that looks really bad in your locker room because you're coming off in a way that's racist. Whether or not he is, I don't know. But that's right. That was the problem with that quote.
Yeah, and it was the whole thing too. It was like coming from college, where college coaches have so much power, and then he came in and was just running like crazy stuff. It was never going to work. On the Ty Lue front, though, you're 100% right. He wouldn't have made it through the rebuild because it wasn't fair to him in that regard. Mm-hmm. You also needed to wash off the LeBron sense, right? Yep. Like that was important. Like if Ty Lue hung around in Cleveland, maybe you get here anyway. But because he was so attached to the LeBron arc, if you will, of that whole run with David Blatt and then Ty Lue takes over, yada yada. Like we all know the story. After LeBron leaves, like you can't have Ty Lue hanging around too long. It was just too close to that other thing, and you're never going to be that LeBron thing again. So you need it to fresh start. I just bring him up because he's your former coach, and I just love what he does. If there's a coach in this league who likes pushing buttons, it's freaking Ty Lue, and I love that.
Ty Lue's the kind of guy that plays Mortal Kombat, presses 100 buttons, and it ends up with 25 combos, wins immediately.
100%.
And back on the small forward count, finishing up on the Jetty Osman, which I was essentially saying he's had some great moments, but it's also been confusing these last 2 years when he's still very solid shooter. And when he plays big minutes, they win. Great follow on Twitter for sarcastic and serious content. Jetty Osman fan club. It's been building. He's at 2,100 followers, starting to start the year at like 700. It is a great account because anytime you post something about Jetty Osman, you're going to have a good engagement and a good conversation about Jetty Osman. But the thing is, I still don't think he'd be good starting. I'd like him today he was the 6th man. It really should be Okoro starting. And now that we've seen Danny Green, whatever he has or will play, I think the ideal rotation going forward should be this. Garland, Mitchell, Okoro should come back. I think the early fouls killed them because I think the offense did enough in his absence in that game too that it threw everything off. Okoro, Mobley, Allen, and then whenever you do, LeVert 6, Osman 7, no more Ricky Rubio. I'm sure you were even not even rooting for the Cavs. I'm sure you were very surprised to see him come in the game. I know I was.
It was a flash, it was a blink, and he was out of there.
Yeah, he hasn't done it. I don't know how he lasted 6 minutes either. He doesn't have a shot anymore. It stinks. If he didn't get hurt last year, get a different story. And on that, just prayers up Victor Oladipo, who might not play another game as he tries to come back. That absolutely sucks because he was actually looking solid after dealing with this. It was a second major injury. I think personally he tries to come back one more time. I feel like he thinks he's not ready to become a rapper yet. He's not ready to challenge Dame for the title of best basketball rapper yet. Does have some good stuff. He does. And he doesn't flaunt it, Pete. So we don't hear it as much. He's not posting his lyrics. Maybe he is. Maybe he has. Some NBA players have YouTube channels, and it's kind of funny to me. Like Dellavedova has a YouTube channel, and he's my favorite player, but I just find it really funny to think that Dellavedova, and Draymond has all this, but like I think of Matthew Dellavedova in his spare time, sitting on his MacBook, opening up YouTube and typing out a post. It's a really funny visual to me. Right,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean?
I have to imagine that they have like producers and teams and stuff, right?
Of course.
There's no way Delly's sitting on his phone on CapCut cutting up TikToks.
I mean, he's not. He puts the time in. He's the only guy that could guard Steph Curry for a whole game in the entire league. And now Steph's had bad games. Don't come for me, anyone else that's seen someone guard him for a whole game. But your guy didn't go to the hospital and get you 2 straight wins when it's LeBron, Dellavedova, and guys that would be coming off the bench. No one else can say they had that. So shout out to my guy. Can't see the framed poster because it's to the left, and also I have to have the blur background. But to the left in my room, I do have the Dellavedova signed poster. And of course, coincidence, Varejão's guarding Amari in the post, and it's Cavs Knicks. Dellavedova has his hands up against Pablo Prigioni trying to find Amari in the post, guarded by Varejão. I can't take it off. I don't think I'd get a good enough angle here. I will share with it after we're off, but kind of funny that comes up. But that should be the rotation. Go back to Lamar Stevens. Get a second JYD, Junkyard Dog, in there. If you get that energy, you play defense. You have nothing else to lose. I think they have to play the Lamar Stevens card. Anyone that doesn't know much about him, go back. I have an old episode detailing his entire career in college leading up to his Cavs breakthrough. And then secondly, he's 9 points away from passing Taylor Battle for most all time, but because of COVID, he didn't get March Madness. He's him, and Lamar Stevens makes differences. You have nothing to lose. You're down 3-1.
Yeah, I agree. They need to be more multiple and less worried about them scoring points because they should be able to score points even though Levert's not doing his thing. All right, let's do our game 5 musts and look forward to the rest of the series. Just to reiterate, not to add salt to the wound here, but you picked Cavs in 6.
I did.
Much to my chagrin, that I will eat these words, I picked Cavs in 7, which is obviously still a possibility, and I'm nervous, and I hope I'm wrong. But I did pick Cavs in 7. So as much as I'm going to be here and talk about how I predicted the Knicks' depth would be this and that, I did say Cavs in 7. So we'll see what happens. But first, before 6 and 7 comes game 5. So Zach, hit us with your game 5 must for this upcoming battle on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I got 4 things. The first, Donovan, quick start. He scored 11. First 5 minutes of the game, I want him to have 4 to 5 shot attempts. I don't care about moving the ball. I don't care about getting anyone else involved. Make your shots. He's had those types of games, and that's when he's at his best. Being aggressive early will keep him locked in. Number 2, box out. It's easy. You're big. I don't care that you have small arms. And I actually quoted, when I hopped on Sports Grid, the Twigman comments I'd been seeing. I quoted it, and I certainly have eaten my words again because, unfortunately, Evan Mobley's played like a Twigman. You know, you gotta go from being a twig to a nice oak tree. If anyone's ever seen Ned's Declassified, and I've been listening to the podcast, be oak. Strong as oak. Oak is strong. No one likes twigs. Be the oak. They can't move you. You can't cut down an oak tree. You can take a twig and throw it 10,000 feet if you have the muscle of, who's the next strongest? Julius Randle. Probably take a twig and throw it 50 football fields. It's huge. Yep. Okay. So don't box out, please. You're big. I don't care how strong they are. You're bigger. Box out, make them go over the top of you and get fouls. 3, help defense. Easier said than done. Playing NBA defense is very difficult if you're not huge or agile or have a wingspan. We don't have wingspan players. We don't have John Hammond at GM. I do like Kobe Altman. We don't have John Hammond. We're not drafting Giannis's with this and the Bol Bols and the Thon Makers and the Michael Carter Williamses. But just help. No more open threes. Every time the Knicks had a wide open 3 off that double team, they'd miss it and then get the rebound. I don't care that they were missing it. They shouldn't be getting them. And then last and not least, make Jalen Brunson give up the ball. I don't care if you double every time. Quickley didn't make anything today. RJ Barrett was 0 for 6 from downtown. Josh Hart had his moments, but if you make him shoot 8 threes, he's only going to make 2 or 3. Make other guys make the shots. And then if that happens, we're going to game 6.
I like those a lot. I think those are all on point there. The Mitchell fast start is absolutely what the Cavs need because nothing's scarier than when he hits 2 threes in the first 4 minutes, especially at home, and the crowd is just going absolutely bonkers. And the Knicks are like, what just happened? We're down 9. And it's like 3 minutes into the game. That can happen with Donovan Mitchell. The The Brunson thing is what I want to touch on most, though, because we talked about the rebounding and the defense and stuff. They did double Brunson a lot. And there were points of the game where I was actually clamoring with my buddy saying, dude, Brunson looks kind of flummoxed right now. He's not getting good looks for himself or others. And he's kind of getting nervous trying to get rid of the ball out of these doubles because Jeff Van Gundy pointed out they were waiting for the shot clock to go down to kind of kill some time with the 8-point lead or so. And then they were getting into their offense with like 8 seconds on the shot clock. What saved them was the offensive rebounding. It wasn't that Brunson was making these incredible passes out of the double team and RJ Barrett was hitting open threes. That didn't happen. They missed those shots. But Brunson was a little bit flummoxed there. And I was almost surprised when I saw his stat line pop up that he had 29. I mean, yes, he hit 5 threes. That helps a lot. He got to the free throw line only twice, but he hit a lot of those little elbow jumpers, those fadeaways he hits from the elbow extended. Those are good shots for him. They're not good shots for most. But if the Cavs can get the ball out of his hands, that's when you need to then see a Julius Randle game. And I'm not saying he needs to go for 40. He needs to be consistent. He needs to be solid. He needs to attack the rim. He needs to hit a few jump shots. So I agree that that's a must for you guys to get the ball out of Brunson's hands because he's been so solidly and consistent, or solid and consistent. Sorry, I almost said inconsistent there. And then Julius Randle needs to help off there. He needs to be the secondary star that he is and score 20 points. Like he needs to hit some jump shots. He needs to get to the free throw line because I agree. I think they're going to attack the hell out of Jalen Brunson and get the ball out of his hand. He got 29 in his sleep in game 4. They can't let that happen again. And Quickley needs to show up. I've been saying we need Quickley to do a lot this series. He's done close to nothing. And we're still in this very advantageous spot, up 3-1 right now. And all it takes is one at this point. So for my must, on the flip side of your Cavaliers based must, my must is that Quickley better hit some freaking shots and make some plays in game 5. Because all it takes is one, Zach. And he may have been a nothing this entire series, but if he has that one game where he goes for 18 because Hart doesn't have it or Barrett doesn't have it or Brunson only goes for 18 himself, that's the game changer. The strength in numbers doesn't mean that every bench player is going to go off every single game. It means that every game, 1 to 3 guys can make their fair share of an impact, and Quickley has to do something in this series. And not only will it help him win game 5 or 6 or whatever game it might be, it'll help him be better in the next series, which I don't want to count my chickens. The series is not over yet, obviously. But if Brunson gets doubled and attacked, which he should and will, Quickley has to do something about it. It can't be all Barrett. It won't be all Barrett in my estimation. Hopefully I'm wrong again on that front. It has to be Randle. It has to be Quickley.
And I'll say this. This is what determines game 5. And I'm not predicting 6 or 7. I'm not going there. Again, no more picking ahead for me. But I'll say this. We're going to go back to One Tree Hill as we start to wrap up here to talk about what has to happen. Whichever player becomes the skills tailor for their team tonight is going to be the one that gets the win. And let me explain what I mean by that. To anyone that hasn't seen One Tree Hill, there were 2 different basketball teams in the first season of the show. There's the actual high school team and there's the River Court team. The River Court team just plays pickup. They're good, but they're just playing pickup ball. Every player in the NBA can dominate the River Court if they wanted to play there, no matter who they're bringing. They're NBA players, okay? The spotlights are off. The defense isn't as hard. And so whichever team gets that guy that hasn't shown up yet in this series through 4 games to come and tear it up, because Skills Taylor, by the time One Tree Hill was over, spoiler alert, sorry, Skills Taylor was on the team. We talked about Lucas Scott. We talked about Nathan Scott. Skills Taylor's the 3rd guy on that team. He's fantastic. He's an ISO scorer pretty much. He has a bag. He's a great passer. Real name Antoine. It's kind of funny. His character name and his real name were the same. Played by, I think it was actually played by Antoine. Might have been
Tanner.
Antoine Taylor? Antoine Tanner.
Antoine Tanner. I didn't pull that out. I looked it up.
It's Antoine Tanner, right? And his character
48 years old, by the way. If you want to,
yeah, he was very old. He's the Jason Earls of Hannah Montana of One Tree Hill. but anyway, on a serious note, whichever player is the skills tailor, right? Who's going to show up that hasn't? Will it be IQ for the Knicks? Will it be Jetty for the Cavs? Will it be Lamar Stevens? Is Evan Mobley going to come and score 30 all of a sudden, right? Is someone else on the Knicks? Is Quentin Grimes going to come back and challenge Hart for more minutes? Will Josh Hart score 30? Whoever just comes and has that massive game that we don't expect it from, they're going to win. I'm not predicting Cavs or Knicks because I've been very off And I don't want to put any possible jinxes in the air, but whoever has that guy that can come that we're not expecting, that's that X factor, you're going to win the game. And if it's Knicks fans, congrats. You're the better team. I'll be reading about it for another year. And if it's the Cavs, hold on there. We're not done yet, Eager McBee.
We live to see another day. And I agree with you because that's what we said before the series, or at least what I said before the series. Randle and Brunson never needed to outscore Mitchell and Garland. That they needed to just hang with them. If you can hang with the starters of Cleveland, you now have the opportunity and the upper hand because your bench and depth is better. That's always been their ticket the whole time through. That's why your point is absolutely spot on. If it is Jetty, if it is Mobley, if it is LeVert, who can do it, even if we get frustrated with what he does game to game or moment to moment, it can be LeVert, right? If whoever that third guy is for either team who actually takes over and has that quarter of dominance or that stretch of just making play after play after play, that's the difference. It always has been this entire series. And weirdly, game 1 and game 4 have that in it, where it was Hart in game 1 and 4. Game 2, you guys dominated all the way through. You had that one quarter explosion. It was over. Game 3, the Knicks kind of took the big lead and ran away with it. So those games are a little bit different. But any game that's relatively close here, you're going to look at the starters for the Cavs and the best players for the Knicks ending up about even. At some point, they're going to be around even. And then it's that other guy who steps up, the skills Taylor. I love that pull right there. That's the difference maker. So, Zach, great episode as always. Love talking hoops with you, chopping it up across the Cavs podcast, across Cavs on Twitter. Zach Weiss. Is it Zach Weiss on TikTok? Is this your name?
No, my TikTok is the thing. It's the triumphant something. Honestly, that's mostly my broadcasting highlight. So it's separate.
Hey.
If you want to hear my voice get a little more animated, I would say I'll get my ad here. I haven't actually plugged my TikTok before. This will be my first live TikTok plug. Me and my 36 followers out here. It's at Zach23 Weiss.
Perfect. I like seeing it. I'm just saying, if it's a place to hear more of you, then it's a good place to go check it out. Why not, right?
Respect. I appreciate that.
Of course. So good stuff. Across the Cavs on social media. Another crossover episode with Subway Sports Talk. And I guess we'll see what happens with the rest of this series if we're going to be talking again, because this is good. I'll miss this when the series is over nonetheless.
I will too, Pete. And I have to say, my last off the beaten path. Anytime someone says, of course, you have to say a horse is a horse. You just have to. I don't know if you're the same way, Mr. Ed, which I got confused for other things. I thought it was a movie, but a horse is a horse. Of course. Every time someone texts me, of course, you'll see if you do it. That's what I'll always reply with. So closing out, a horse is a horse. Of course. The Cavs can win if a player is skills Taylor. And
there you
I appreciate the shout out. And Pete called it a great episode. If you think it's a great episode, you got to drop both of us. Drop a review, not just mine, not just his. 5-star 2-way, baby.
That's it. If they do that, if they go on the old Apple Podcast app, they click on Across the Cavs, 5 stars. This show's great. 5-star Subway Sports Talk. This show's great. Wow, what a nice thing you guys just did. That's just lovely. That's just lovely. And my last shout out for this episode, wrong point here if you're watching on YouTube. This side over here, I had to replace my album on the wall to a Spike Lee joint. I got the He Got Game soundtrack on vinyl. I threw it in the frame. It's on the wall in the YouTube video. It felt right today. The Spike Lee joint, He Got Game, Denzel Washington, Jesus Shuttlesworth, a.k.a. Ray Allen. What a wonderful movie. And yeah, that's what I felt like today watching Jalen Brunson, that He Got Game. And RJ Barrett.
And my last comment is it actually looks exactly like Jared Allen to me. If you look at the poster real quick, I'm looking at Jared Allen.
Got the fro and everything. That's great. If he had the headband, then it'd be really real.
Well, he does have the headband. If you look underneath the Publican Enemy, it looks like a headband on his forehead.
It does. That's great. Look at that. All right. Well, beautiful stuff here. Again, check out Across Cavs on social media, Subway Sports Talk. You know where to find it. And Apple Podcasts. Yeah, of course. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on Instagram and TikTok at Subway Sports Talk, Twitter at Subway Sports Talk, TLK, because they don't let us use enough characters. Whatever, Twitter. I'll get over it one day. That's all we got. Cavs, Knicks, Game 5 on Wednesday. Let us know what you think. Drop a comment, leave a review. We appreciate you. Cheers.